Gonna do another shirtless video. This one's for the ladies. Gotta soak up some of this sun simulator. Get while the getting's good before the weather gets to the point where you turn completely pale, ghosty white from being indoors for the rest of the winter. I'm gonna talk about whatever comes to mind. But one thing is, Schadenfreude is the same thing as demonic possession. Schadenfreude is more of a psychological term used within the world of psychology, like professional psychologists. But it's not even an English word. We don't even have a word for it in English, which encourages us to continue engaging in that kind of behavior without a word to identify it and know what it is and be able to point out to the person next to you, you're engaging in Schadenfreude. Oh, sorry, yeah, you're right, I guess I am, huh? I'll try not to do that anymore. The fact that we don't have a word to identify it probably makes sure that there's more of it going on in our society. Schadenfreude is a German word that means harm joy, where you get pleasure and satisfaction out of someone else's pain and suffering. You get joy out of their harm. Harm joy is the direct translation from German to English of the word Schadenfreude. Harm joy. Now I'm going to use someone as a landmarker in order to help navigate this terrain of hearts and minds on the battlefield of hearts and minds, which is where we're all at. You have to use certain people and their demonstration of certain behavior patterns as a landmarker, as a reference being. Just like Greg Braden said, Jesus Christ was a reference being, and he demonstrated some things and some behavior patterns for us. And now that he did it, it's in the grids. We've all got access to it now. The life lessons that he discovered and demonstrated through actions that speak louder than words, by teaching through example. Likewise, Doug is a reference being who left us with some lessons by teaching by way of example through actions that speak louder than words. He engages in harm joy. Schadenfreude, it's pretty much the only kind of pleasure and satisfaction he gets is out of seeing other people suffer. Now, one example, we all do this, okay? Our society is plagued with it, hardcore. And what I'm working my way around to is showing you that this is the same exact thing as what we've heard described as demonic possession. In form of the word, those are two different things. Demonic possession sounds totally different than Schadenfreude. In the form of the word, of the label that you ascribe to this behavior pattern, but in function, they are the same exact behavior pattern. We're told that that's what demonic possession is. It's these spirits that get into you and they feed on negative energy. They have joy and pleasure that they derive from people's pain and suffering. So they try and create more of it as many places within as many people as they possibly can, because it brings them joy to harm others. That is what we've been told or described within the religious realm as a demonic spirit, or in the psychological realm as Schadenfreude disorder, if you will. But it's the order of the day here in our society. It's not a disorder. It is the order. So Schadenfreude and demonic possession are the same thing. One is spoken of in a religious sense within that institution and called demonic possession or demonic infestation or whatever. But the function is the same. The form of the word and the label is the only difference. And that's why I always tend to prioritize function over form. So, there's this TV series on MTV called Ridiculousness. The whole thing is just filled from one end to the other of the whole episode with a guy falling off a skateboard and smashing his face on the curb. A guy going over the front handlebars of a BMX bicycle and smashing his face on the curb. A guy flying off of a four-wheeler and smashing his face on a tree. And it's much like the movie Idiocracy, where the one show that they like to watch, there's like two shows that everyone watches. And one of them's balls, where all it's filled with is people getting kicked in the balls, or hit with a baseball, or a basketball, or landing on a horse wrong, or whatever. And the whole thing is just filled with people getting their balls smashed. I think the other one is butts. The other show that they watch in Idiocracy. Well, here in our world, it's not in a movie Idiocracy, it's in our world. And people like watching that shit. I can only watch about 5 minutes. But on weekends, like there's I don't know how often they produce an episode, but on weekends, they'll play it back to back to back to back to back episodes. I'd go in there and see my mom and Doug sitting here watching these back to back episodes of ridiculousness, and I can only take about 5 minutes of it. The opposite of ridiculousness is a video series on the internet called Humans Are Awesome, where it shows the heights we achieve and the success of these feats that we dare attempt. So in the video series Humans Are Awesome, it doesn't show all the failures of people trying to attempt great things. It shows all the successes and all the greatness that they achieve. So, gonna use Doug as a reference here, okay? It's nothing personal. I really don't have the strong emotional charge towards him that some might think that I would. Surprisingly low level of emotional charge regarding the subject matter. Some people say, I like Dougie. Yeah, I really like Dougie. He's one of my favorites. Because it makes them feel better about themselves. Through moral relativism, gauging your own level of a good person or a bad person in relationship to others by comparison to others, like grading on a curve. If there's 5 people in a class and the teacher grades you on a curve, the highest score gets an A, the lowest score gets an F. A, B, C, D, and F. So, the guy who maybe got a C, before Dougie came into the classroom and we're grading on a curve, once Dougie comes into the classroom, now I got a B and Dougie got the C or the D or the F. And everyone else has moved up the scale a notch because he's now entered into the equation through this relative grading system. And I may be this and I may be that, but standing here next to Dougie, I look like I'm a pretty good person. Because he has completely given up on even holding up the facade or the image of a good person. In fact, he's proud of his deviancy. He wears his schadenfreude on his sleeve. He lets everybody see how much joy he gets out of someone else's pain and suffering and harm that they experience. So, the reason I like Dougie is because he makes me feel good about myself. He makes me feel like I'm a really good person. Standing next to him, by comparison and contrast, on a scale of moral relativism, he's given up any sense of morals and ethics, and he's even proud of his immoral and unethical behavior, so much so that he boasts about it. He flaunts it like it's a strength of character, not a character defect. So standing here next to Dougie, I look like a pretty good person. So to take it back to the general application of this understanding that schadenfreude is the same thing as demonic possession, and it is a disease that one person passes to another person, passes to another person. And that's why Doug has it so bad, because everyone in the world abused me and gave me harm, so it makes me feel good to return the favor. And I use what was done to me as justification for what I do to other people. Do unto others as they have done unto you, right? Just as a quick reference, Doug is where I got the top shelf shit, where you take the tank off the toilet and shit in the tank. And even though you don't get to see the next person that goes in there come out going, oh, goddamn, it makes him feel good that he ruined someone's day. It makes him feel good that he inflicted harm on another person. That's right down to the song, put a tack on teacher's chair, somebody snitched on me, and I ain't getting nothing for Christmas. Right? That song where you put a tack on teacher's chair, and it gives you a sense of joy to see the harm that it inflicts when teacher sits down on that tack and goes, ow! It gives Doug a sense of joy to know that he put a tack on someone's chair by shitting in the top tank of the toilet. even though he never gets to see their face, their reaction, or any of it. Just knowing that I ruined someone's day gives me a feeling of satisfaction. And after having practiced that as a way of life for so long, that's the only joy and satisfaction a person gets, is from the harm and the pain and the suffering that they see someone else go through. And it is a spiritual disease, like a virus that gets passed from one person to another. And that's why we're on a consciousness farm that is enclosed, a closed system, so that we don't get out of here and start spreading our mental illness and our spiritual viruses and our schadenfreude and our demonic possession to others in other consciousness farms or in the world at large. And that's why only some that have demonstrated certain characteristics of behavior make it out of here. If you can't stand the heat, then just stay out the light. But you might never make it out alive. That's a lyric from Legendary by Welshly Arms. So, the most recent concept and understanding that I've come to is that there is a type 1 civilization going to extract certain individuals from our culture before the rest are destroyed. Because entire cultures or communities or societies do not evolve to a type 1 civilization. They destroy themselves before they reach that point. Just as we know that these civilizations have risen and fallen, it seems like they reach a certain state of technological development and then destroy themselves. And then they rise again and reach a certain state of technological development and destroy themselves. But before they destroy themselves, individuals within that culture are extracted to come and join a type 1 civilization, where your daily bread is not what you're fighting for. Survival is a given. But in order to join a society where your daily bread is a given and you don't have to work for your survival, you have to have demonstrated that you are willing and able to contribute to make the world a better place of your own free will, not because you have to go to work every day to eat, but because you want to put in the work every day to make the world a better place. That you're obsessed, as I am, as a social engineer, with acquiring, going out on the hero's journey to acquire that which you can bring back to the tribe and deliver once you've acquired those jewels that will benefit the world and make the tribe, give the tribe some sort of benefit. So this type 1 civilization that extracts individuals just prior to the cataclysm, just prior to the reset, is doing so and processing us right now. Most people, they're processed very easily. They're given an opportunity to demonstrate their true colors, and they do what they've always done, and they're processed. They're out of here. They don't make it through the filter. 90 whatever % of the population doesn't make it through the filter because they're engaged in a self-serving lifestyle, self-centered, get ahead at the expense of others. Because when you give a civilization, a society, technology, they will destroy themselves with it. Like giving monkeys a pile of guns and showing them how to load those guns with the ammunition, and then just leaving the pile of guns and the pile of ammunition there. Within a very short time, that tribe of monkeys will destroy themselves. The same tribe of monkeys that lived generation after generation after generation. Once given that technology, they will destroy themselves with it. Because they have not reached a level of social emotional learning that they are capable of living in a world with this type of technology and not destroying themselves with it. Likewise, with the luxuries of having the affluence of an economy like we have here in the United States. Because as I've said before in previous videos, love, the experience of survival, is the key to the gravity of love. That's a lyric and the title of a song by Enigma. And when you no longer have that daily experience of survival, you don't have to fight for your daily bread. You no longer have the love that is what the glue that holds a society together, that keeps that social fabric from unraveling. But once you're given the money of an affluent economy, people think, well, I don't need these people anymore. Fuck the social fabric. I got some money. I don't need any of these motherfuckers. Kind of like Doug. When he decided he's got $600,000 coming, he can cut the ties and burn the bridges with everyone around him. He's got enough money that he can make it through without any relationships. So he's willing to, like his inner Smeagol came out, covet the precious. Go get the precious, kill the hobbitses. But hobbitses is our friend. Get the precious. And his inner Smeagol took over when he had 600,000 sugar plums dancing in his head. He suddenly no longer needs those social relationships. He's got enough money, he can just make it all by himself. That's why the affluence of an economy that provides you with your daily bread and then some is just like giving them the technology. They will destroy themselves with it. Because the experience of survival is the key to the gravity of love, which is the glue that holds the fabric of society together. And when you think you've got enough money that you no longer have to engage in that struggle for your daily bread, and the experience of survival is no longer your daily experience, you've got enough in your bank account that'll last you the rest of your life, you lose that key to the gravity of love and that glue that keeps the social fabric together. And your own personal world or your own personal society unravels on an individual basis and a collective basis. So it is a mercy killing that happens once our society reaches a point where we are slowly destroying ourselves because of the technology we have access to and the affluence of the economy that we live within. We are on a downward spiral that will eventually lead to total destruction. So it is actually an act of mercy to quicken that process, expedite the eventuality that they are headed for, and destroy them more quickly than they are destroying themselves. Like in the song, "We will make great pets." It's talking about aliens, civilization of a higher technology and consciousness than our own, that we will make great pets for them. And that we're doing ourselves in faster than the dinosaurs ever did. We'll make great pets. We'll make great pets. We'll make great pets. Link will be in the description. But individual cells within that culture of consciousness that have demonstrated that they are a viable candidate, qualified in areas of character, to join a Type 1 civilization because they are dedicated to, obsessed with, cannot get enough of going to work every day to try and make the world a better place for free, even at great expense to themselves, not because they're getting money for it and it gives them a way to sustain their way of life, but they are burning their candle at both ends, burning out their whole way of life, and all their time, effort, energy, and resources are dedicated to this job. You hear who I'm describing here? Those people that have demonstrated that they are qualified applicants that would be compatible with the society where you don't have to fight for your daily survival, they're the ones that get extracted and raised up to a Type 1 civilization. Groups don't find God, individuals find God. Groups don't advance to a Type 1 civilization and evolve. Sorry, I gotta turn around. The biobots are like swarming. They don't know why they're driven by impulse to stop here and turn there and slow down and speed up. They just are. So, when these beings of consciousness pay it forward and extract you from a culture of consciousness that is on a path of self-destruction, you will then feel obligated, or at least compelled, to do the same for others. And come back to a society that's on a path of self-destruction and extract individuals who are qualified candidates for a Type 1 civilization. Now I'm going to cut to another subject. A video by jaydreamers that he titled Omnes Terrae, All Worlds. And it's showing a bunch of domes, okay? I mentioned this idea on a previous video, said imagine the world is a lot bigger than it is and it has a bunch of domes on it. I hadn't watched that video yet, but I read someone's comment this morning who referenced, they didn't name Jaydreamers by name. They said that channel that did a video with a bunch of domes the other day. And I don't know if that's the channel they're talking about or not, but as soon as I read that comment, I went, oh yeah. And I remember Jaydreamers had made a video, and on the thumbnail, it shows a bunch of domes. And that's one of the cosmologies he's putting out there as a possibility. I hadn't watched that video yet. When I put out the idea that maybe we're just on a huge globe that's so big you can't measure the curvature, or maybe it's in a crater where there's a flat bottom, but that there's a bunch of domes here, there, and everywhere, and you can go from this dome to the next dome. That's exactly what Jaydreamers is putting out. He says you can go from one dome to the other underground. Again, I had not read that or watched that video when I made that assertion the other day, that that's a possibility of our world we live in. But on that video where Jaydreamers describes these multiple domes, he also puts it into the cosmology of synapses. Neurons that fire together, wire together, and neurons that no longer fire together, no longer wire together. Or synapses that fire together, wire together. Either way, it's something I've been saying for a while. But his cosmology in this video is both that we live on a surface where there's multiple domes, multiple worlds, multiple firmaments, right next to each other, and that we're basically in the brain of God. I have to keep hitting pause, and it's so fucking annoying every time these normies walk and ride by. I just look the other way. They disgust me. And I don't care how that makes you feel about yourself. But in this cosmology that Jaydreamers describes in his video that I'll link in the description, along with the physical world we live in that is a bunch of domes, the conceptual world that he describes is one where we are living in the mind of God. And when one synapse fires its information over to another, that's the plasma apocalypse. That's when the mind of God makes a decision of what would be best for the future. And he collects all the information, which is you and me. Like the song by 21 Pilots, Chlorine, I'm just a chemical. Can you build my heart from pieces? I'm just a chemical. You would therefore be the electrochemical firing of a synapse that either gets transferred or deleted. Just like brain cells are killed by drugs and alcohol. Yeah, most of this world needs a big fat LSD hit. But in that transference, in that video, he talks about how the buildup, while the energy is building up, it is negatively charged. Then when it is released, it's positively charged. And everyone's all happy, and it's the golden age. Leading up to that transfer, all that negative energy, that negatively charged behavior that you see people engaging in, that's part of God's plan. And this goes back to Greg Braden's assertion about the power of the blessing. The power of the blessing is simply to acknowledge that there is one source of all creation and all things that you ever may witness or experience. One source, not two, not God and the devil. God. God allowed all of that pain and suffering to happen for a reason, as part of his plan. And once you acknowledge that, you're no longer polarized, pushing for this and against that, for comfort and convenience and against pain and suffering. You recognize that all of it is part of God's plan, and you allow it, and you enter into the state of allowance that Esther Hicks talks about. And she channels a group of beings that call themselves Abraham. And her law of attraction teachings are about how to let go of that. It's almost like James True's teachings about the two poles, the two pillars, mercy and severity. You're going away from the stick and towards the carrot. The stick is to inflict pain. The carrot is to inflict comfort. And that's how society is driven between these two poles. They are motivated to go away from the pain and towards the comfort. My life, my love, my drive, it came from pain. You break me down, you build me up, believer. I'm a believer. But most of society is driven away from the pain as if it's a bad thing, as if, oh, that's to be avoided and suppressed and tried to be eliminated from this world. And Greg Braden says, when you see something that hurts your heart, an elephant being killed on a wild game reserve in Africa, a war-torn country in Africa, bless. The power of the blessing is to acknowledge that all things are from that one source of creation. We are in one mind of God, not two. And the blessing is to acknowledge, I have to keep stopping it because these fucking normies come out of everywhere. The power of the blessing is to acknowledge there is one source of all creation and of all things that you may ever experience or witness. And that even the pain and suffering and the things that hurt you the most are part of that one source, part of the greater plan. And when you can do this, it releases you from the negative emotional charge that that thing has left you with. But it does no good to bless something in the moment as it's happening, Greg Braden says. Because in the moment, as it's happening, it is your job to try and make the world a better world. But with the understanding that even all of the pain and suffering and all of that negative energy during the build-up process leads to the positive energy release in the transference of that, what does Jay call it? The action potential. Action potential when a neuron fires and releases that electrochemical energy. When the plasma apocalypse happens and those whose heart is light as a feather get to go up and be with God. It's also the choice point referred to by Greg Braden in those original videos I watched 20 years ago. The choice point for a quantum leap. When you hear the word quantum, you think, oh, it must be some really highly complex, complicated, some equation that involves pi. No, the mechanics of this could be far simpler than that. The quantum leap, as Greg Braden describes, we may be what seems like we're on a road that's headed toward World War III or some sort of cataclysm and disaster, impending doom. But it doesn't have to be that way. At that choice point, you can make a quantum leap. And I think what he might have been referring to is those people, and he was also talking about how love activates your DNA, turns on certain switches and off other switches. The phantom photon DNA effect proves this. That emotion entrains DNA, and DNA entrains light. And that at that choice point, when it seems as all is lost, we're on our road to destruction, that at that choice point, a quantum leap is possible. And that quantum leap might simply be that this type 1 civilization extracts individuals from a culture that is on a path of self-destruction because those type 1 individuals have demonstrated their qualities of character that would make them a viable candidate who would make our world a better place. Because we don't invite people that are infected with cultural viruses into our community. We don't invite people that with schadenfreude or demonic possession to come join us and spread their illness. We invite those whose hearts is as light as a feather, even though they've been through some of the most difficult things to endure that a person could possibly imagine. They haven't let it harden their heart. In fact, to the contrary, because of those things that I've been through, the regular, everyday, petty grievances that most people have, like water off a duck's back, does not affect me, does not interest me in thinking about and contemplating about. Even Doug, I haven't thought about an inheritance or whatever that court is they call it. Probate court. He's the furthest thing from my mind on a daily basis. These guys at work, they worship me. Like James True says, anything that you pay attention to, you are worshiping, even if it's, I hate you, I can't stand you, I'm going to spend all day trying to come up with a way to get rid of you. These petty grievances that most people spend all of their time entertaining, they don't appeal to me. I don't think about those things. I don't feel those things that they feel because I don't think about those things that they think about. And this relates to Vanessa VA and myself saying, God sees through your eyes. God hears through your ears, smells through your nose, experiences this world through your senses. And God don't like to hang out with people that are wrapped up in all that petty grievance stuff. God likes to hang out with people whose heart is as light as a feather. God likes to experience this world through someone who's not infected with schadenfreude and demonic possession. And when God's mind comes to that action potential point where the synapses are about to fire, the plasma apocalypse is about to occur, and he extracts the best information that there is from these lifetimes of experience that this synapse has processed, and making the best decision for God's world that God possibly can, most people don't make it through the filter. Reference here the song Tryouts for the Human Race. Well, one or two make it through, the rest of you disappear. And you can read that those lyrics are actually referencing the world from a sperm, the perspective of a sperm. And then remember that we are in seed form here in the human world. We are currently in seed form, as above, so below. And that's what Jaydreamers shows, is that you can look into the microcosm of the mind and see these synapses firing within our own brains. Or you can look into the macrocosm of the universe and see that we are on one big synapse. And maybe it's not that big. Relative to the size of God, it's one synapse in God's brain. And that's how time distortions and dilations work also. In that video, Jaydreamer says, what seems like a micro fraction of a second to God for a synapse to fire is millennia in our world, because there is a time distortion. And that is what is portrayed in the movie Interstellar, where he says that a fifth dimension consciousness of beings, it was us who sent ourselves back to the past to save ourselves, that a fifth dimensional group of beings created a third dimensional world for us to experience, and that time changes. That's why he sent his android TARS through, and when he ends up in this portal, in this bookshelf, looking at his daughter 30 years ago, he's aging 10 times quicker than he did, but he's only 1/10 of the size that he was in his human lifetime. This also matches up with Robin Hanson and his talk at the Mormon Transhumanist Association, or at Google Talks, where he talks about M's, the same as you understand Sims, simulated humans, bots that have human characteristics and personalities programmed into the algorithm of that bot, that high speed is high class. But the faster you go, the smaller physically you become. But back to the movie Interstellar. His basic premise in that movie is that there was a previous generation of humanity that made it through the reset and became a type 1 civilization. And they are extracting those of us from the third dimensional world that we are in to join them. We came to save ourselves. We sent ourselves a message into the past. That's the retrocausal language that Vanessa VA talks about when she receives the messages in the music. So this type 1 civilization, a previous generation of ours that made it through the reset, It's better to understand it. Who knows if anyone actually evolved by themselves as a society through the reset to become a type 1 civilization. Far more likely is that individuals are extracted from the society just prior to the reset. When I say reset, remember pushing reset button on your Nintendo box? That's all it is. Those that didn't make it to a level up, didn't get the 1-up mushroom, don't get to go to the next level. They just got to reset. They redo this level over and over until they make it through. Until their consciousness develops to a point where it is compatible with a type 1 civilization. But those of us that have, they got all sorts of jobs. You don't have to be a social engineer whose thinking patterns are as sophisticated as mine. You just have to be someone who is willing to be socially engineered. Be still and know that I am God. Free your mind. No one gets on board thinking they know something. People clinging to their preconceived ideas are going to cling to this world and go down with it and do the reset. People that have learned that they don't know anything and can be a child in the presence of God, curious about everything and certain about nothing, they're qualified to come with. And we need all types of people to kickstart a new society. Cooks, people that can clean, mechanics, every position within society. But not people that are forced to work every day for their daily bread. People who are willing to make the world a better place and put all their time, effort, energy, and resources into doing so without a threat of starvation. Those are the kind of people that get to come with. So if you've demonstrated that you've sacrificed yourself in the process in order to make the world a better place for your own family and your own little circle and your own little sphere of influence, there's a good chance you might get one of those offers. And if the offer is shunned, then you might as well be walking on the sun. That's the reset of the coronavirus. Yeah, that corona referred to is the corona of the sun. And the toilet paper shortage that kicked it off is because everyone started shitting themselves, realizing it's time for the Great Reset. Does it all make sense now? So, if we're in God's brain, and God is trying to refine his thought processes and reach a higher level of consciousness and learn and grow by developing the best of synapses and the best of brain cells, love is the highest consciousness, and the only way you can be in love is to not be in fear. The two cannot inhabit the same heart and mind at the same time. This is what Greg Braden was talking about when he said, love switches on some DNA strands, and fear, the longer, slower wavelength of fear, switches on other DNA strand switches. And during that choice point, where the quantum leap is possible, our bodies would change very quickly, and your thoughts would manifest into reality much more quickly, and that the magnetism was like the glue, the sticky stuff that creates a lag time between the thought and the intention and the manifestation of the reality. And that lag time will disappear, and you will create your own hell if you're still in fear. So, the way to get rid of the fear is to burn it out. You gotta face those fears. And when I went to Missouri, I wasn't sure what was gonna find me on the other side, whether there was an underground Illuminati bloodletting room full of reptilians gonna sacrifice me on some altar, or if I was gonna find out I'm fucking robotic inside. I didn't know what I was looking towards. But I've relinquished all those fears. I've just developed a relationship with God. And because I have that relationship with God, it's good for me to remember those things that, like the lyric says from the Enigma song, there is no teacher that can teach us anything new. Only help us to remember the things we always knew. And I had kind of forgotten somewhere along the way the power of the blessing, to recognize there's one source of all creation, one force guiding all action, which releases the need to fight for this and against that. And when you release your need to fight for this and against that, you release the feedback loop that you're locked into. Through the law of attraction, you can manifest something else. So long as you're continuing to fight for this and against that, you're inviting more of this into your world that you're fighting against. Is how Esther Hicks puts it, or Abraham Hicks puts it. But that power of the blessing releases you from that negative emotional charge that makes you feel like you got to fight for this and against that. Go away from the stick and towards the carrot, the two pillars, the two poles. Mercy and severity. Go away from pain and gravitate towards comfort. That pain, that experience of survival is the key to the gravity of love. And without it, your whole society disintegrates. Even your local one-man society and the people you surround yourself with. As in the example I gave earlier about Doug. Your whole world falls apart. So that pain serves a purpose. And to recognize that God has got a highly sophisticated process that we are all part of. And that it is your job in the moment to make the world a better place. It doesn't mean to just accept the abuse and the pain and the suffering that goes on while it's happening. If you have a part to play in the situation, it is your job to make the world a better place as it's happening in the moment. But it's not your job to go fix the world because it doesn't need fixed. All of that negative emotional energy buildup prior to the neuron firing, the action potential, the choice point, is within a self-balancing, self-correcting system. Because out the other side comes all that positive energy, the golden age, where everyone's all happy. You're in a self-correcting system that has an algorithm, a code, a line of code built into the algorithm that keeps it all working smoothly. You don't have to go fix the world doesn't need fixed. But in the moment, when you have your opportunity where it's a defining moment, a choice point, either you define the moment or the moment defines you, I suggest you rise and shine to your highest potential. But you don't need to go around and find all the problems in the world and fix them because it's a self-correcting system that we're in. You are the few, the proud, you are the antibody, mind, soul, and zen. And the world's a stage, and the world's a phase, and the end is near. A self-correcting system that we're in has antibodies to attack the viruses. You are the few, the proud, you are the antibody, mind, soul, and zen. That's the world. Then tomorrow comes, or tomorrow's gonna, then the morning comes. Then the morning comes by Smash Mouth, the same ones that brought you Walking on the Sun, which is very accurately depicted in a scientific way by suspicious observers in that recent video that I produced. So the same guys that brought you Walking on the Sun brought you Then the Morning Comes. And tomorrow's gonna hurt. And in that video, they show you a Groundhog's Day style repeat of the same events over and over with a slight change. Every day he's trying to get the girl. One day he gets his leg peed on by a dog. In the next episode or version of it, when he wakes up at the same time and the clock strikes noon, he goes throughout the same daily sequence. And this time when he's trying to get the girl, he steps on some gum. And he's embarrassed and humiliated just like when he got his leg peed on by the dog. And he goes through this reset like Groundhog's Day every day, waking up at noon. Right when the clock strikes 12. Then the morning comes. And tomorrow's gonna hurt. You're gonna do it again. You're gonna take them again. Those are both lyrics from in that song. It's referring to a Groundhog's Day type reset that we go through. And you are the few, the proud, you are the antibody of this self-correcting system of consciousness on the consciousness farm. The viruses, the people that are plagued with schadenfreude and demonic possession, they're out of here. And that's what makes it a golden age. Tomorrow's going to be good.